Hi, I'm Amber, also known as the Lone Star Keto Girl, and welcome to the Lone Star Keto Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Sarah Kleiner, and she has such a unique perspective, and this is what I so love about her. She does not believe in living in an echo chamber and buying into all the dogma out there, and so we're going to have a little discussion about that. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Amber. It's awesome to chat with you and be here today.
Thank you so much for joining me. I know you're super busy. So could you, for the people who may not be following you, which I'll be so shocked if any of my followers are not already following you, but could you just give a brief background of some of the health issues that you struggle with, just so people can kind of know where you're coming from?
Yeah, I was put on my first antidepressant when I was 14. I've struggled with anxiety, depression, insomnia for most of my life. I'm 41 now. I've been medication free for 2 years now, which is amazing. But I also had eczema and IBS. I had PCOS, that was pretty bad, and estrogen dominance. So I had a lot of hormonal issues that started probably about 6 years ago and just continued to get worse and worse. So I came to the carnivore diet with a laundry list of things that I was hoping it would help with. And I have definitely had to make some tweaks along the way, but I am still doing carnivore almost 2 years in now and still off all medication. As long as I stay away from dairy, my eczema stays away, no IBS issues, and then my hormones are in really good shape now.
Awesome. That is awesome. So you are considered an ex-vegan. Talk just a little bit about that, because I think, this plays into later on. So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, I've been teaching yoga for almost a decade now. And kind of when I was a newer teacher, I just thought that being vegan was part of the process. Like, that's what you do if you're a yogi and you do yoga. You're supposed to follow a vegetarian or a vegan diet. So of course I dove headfirst into a vegan diet, and I only lasted 2 years. I was in my early 30s at the time. So if I had been a little younger, I may have lasted a bit longer. I think you can get away with more stuff in your 20s. But my health pretty much deteriorated. At the end of the 2 years, I was very under-muscled. I was underweight. I did not look good. My arms were so super skinny. I had cavities. I had never gotten cavities in my life before. I had athletic injuries that just wouldn't heal. And I just felt really terrible. And I tried to do everything like by the book. I had like a purse full of supplements, and I would just always be supplementing. I'd be soaking everything, the grains, the beans, I was doing whole foods. I wasn't doing a lot of vegan junk food like you see people doing. I was really working hard to eat a whole foods, plant-based diet. And it just wasn't working. It just was not working. So eventually one of my yoga teachers actually came to me and was like, you've got to eat some animal foods because your health is really going down. You don't look good. I know you don't feel good, and I know what you're trying to do, but it's not working. So I was very relieved to have someone else just say, especially in the yoga community, say you don't have to do this whole veganism thing in order to be a legit teacher. And so I started off just first with some eggs and felt better right away just with eggs. Then eventually chicken, and I still stayed away from red meat for a while. It was probably a long time before because I just still had this huge fear of red meat. And that continued on for several years. So I didn't go straight from vegan to carnivore. There was about 6 years in between before I went into a carnivore diet. I was largely paleo for that 6-year time period. I did autoimmune paleo, regular paleo, and it just kind of never really fixed a lot of those issues that I was talking about earlier. And I saw some of them actually getting worse because I was, doing still a lot of green smoothies and nuts and seeds and trying to, still eat a lot of whole food plants. And my body just was pretty miserable with all those plants. So like pretty much as soon as I took all of those plants out, my digestion improved 110%. IBS was totally gone. And I had been to so many doctors, and they would just tell me to eat more fiber, or take fiber supplements, and it just made everything worse. So that was the first like miracle of going carnivore, was like, all these digestion issues were just gone.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I totally feel you there. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the echo chamber you were in the vegan community, because here you are, and you still are a yoga instructor, but yet you are a meat-based yoga instructor.
Yes.
Those two words really don't even go together. No. So tell me, how did the vegan community react to you or your yoga, you know, whatever you want to call it, followers or whatever? How did they react to that?
Well, it's different because I wasn't really putting my life out there on the internet in 2014 when I left veganism. I just kind of quietly did it, and I didn't really talk with I've been teaching publicly. Right now I'm just only teaching over Zoom. But at the time, you know, none of my students, I really didn't discuss my diet with my students. I taught, you know, probably 7 to 8 classes a week, maybe even more some weeks. But I didn't really discuss my diet with my students. But I did have students that would remark and say, wow, you look so much better. What have you been doing? Like, because I started getting muscle for the first time. My arms weren't so freaking paper thin. And I started being stronger and able to do poses that I had been working towards for years, but I never had enough muscle or strength to do them without injuring myself. So that, I mean, now I'm very public. I mean, I've got my YouTube channel and my Instagram. And so now it's like I do one little thing and I get like, you know, thousands of messages about it. But yeah, it wasn't really a thing when I left veganism. No one really cared because I just didn't really talk about it with people. It was just like, okay, well, I'm not doing this anymore and I feel better. Cool.
Awesome. Okay, but what about now? Like, still the two words don't go together because you are so public.
I mean, I have a lot of comment blocking features up on my social media because when I first started these accounts, it was kind of a joke. I started the Carnivore Yogi Instagram account as a joke, like totally a joke. I was like, I'm just going to start this account and call it Carnivore Yogi because wouldn't that be hilarious? I was like in a yoga class and I had been carnivore for just like a few weeks and I was feeling so strong. I had just like the best, strongest practice ever, was feeling amazing. And I was like, I'm going to start an Instagram page called Carnivore Yogi. Because I had started, you know how when you go carnivore and you kind of start following a bunch of people on social media to keep you motivated and to learn. And so I had already started doing that with my regular yoga account, which I still have. I just don't usually post that much over there. But I started this Carnivore Yogi account and all of a sudden it just started growing really fast because I think people were like, what? And so my account grew really fast. Within just a couple of months, it surpassed the amount of followers that I had on my regular account. And so right away, I was getting a lot of hateful messages from people, mostly people from the yoga community who I never met. Like people in my personal sphere, my life, they have all been like kind. And if they have a judgment or harsh thing to say, they've kept it to themselves or said it behind my back. No one has said anything personally to me that I know in my personal yoga community. But the rest of the yoga community, I've had a lot of nasty, hateful messages from people. You shouldn't call yourself a yogi, this, that, and the other. And how dare you? And you're disrespectful. And so I do have a lot of comment blocking features because I started noticing they would say a lot of the same things. They would always end it with a namaste, kind of like that's like an extra like really? Do you know the meaning of namaste? Like you're not really supposed to use that in like a hateful way. So yeah, you can't say namaste on my posts. Fun fact. On YouTube or Instagram, you can't say namaste or your comment gets automatically blocked.
That's so funny.
It's hilarious.
Sad.
It's hilarious.
It's funny but sad.
These crazy yoga zealots that it's like the second that you start judging someone else for what they eat, you automatically knock yourself down several notches on the spiritual ladder, in my personal opinion. Once you start pointing a finger and judging someone else, then, you've just kind of shot yourself in the foot, honestly, if we're going to talk about being spiritual or any of that stuff. Like you're kind of defeating the purpose of calling yourself a yogi by doing that. So yeah, it's, I don't really get a lot of those comments because a lot of those words are blocked. So they may be trying, but they're just not getting through.
I love it. That's awesome. And you know what? I need to do the same thing.
Oh my God, it
I'm
saves
just
me so
starting
much
to kind of get
heartache.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of you do this once you have YouTube and Instagram. People will be hateful and they will kind of all say the same things. Like you can't say WHO or World Health Organization under my quotes, because that's all that these vegans have to say is WHO, World Health Organization, over and over again. And you're like, get some new freaking material.
Right?
Can you
It's
get
all the
some?
same cut and paste
It
everything.
is. It's all cut and paste stuff. And I'm just like, oh, we're not doing that. So it'll
Yeah.
save you a lot of headaches to put those features up on your pages. And I don't feel
Nice.
bad about it. I don't feel like it's censorship. I just feel like, no, this is my blog. This is my personal journey that I am sharing with you. So if I don't want things said on that page, then that's my prerogative. I'm not a doctor or an expert. I'm not counseling people or coaching them. I'm just sharing. So if you don't
And you
like
know what? It's
what?
your page. You're the
Right.
dictator of that page. I mean,
Right.
sorry, it's different. It's not the same thing.
Right.
So, you have every right to do that. Yeah. So do you get just like a lot of nasty comments? Let me ask this specifically, because this is something I've been getting lately. Because I've started doing these podcasts, and I'll have a guest on, and maybe that guest is not the absolute perfect Adonis model, whatever it is. And then these people come back and say these nasty things like, well, do they really need to be representing, keto, carnivore, whatever it is? And obviously they're really not doing what they're saying they're doing, because they don't look like they are.
Ugh. Well, here's the other thing I've done on Instagram. I wish I could do this on YouTube because it would save me a lot of heartache. But on Instagram, you can't comment on my posts unless you're following me.
Oh, I like
Yeah, and
that.
I had not done that for a long time. I just recently put that in about 6 weeks ago, and it's been awesome,
Wow.
because most people that are going to leave some kind of a nasty comment like that, they're not going to be following you in the first place. And very rarely will somebody go through the trouble of actually hitting that follow button for the specific reason of like commenting on your stuff. So that kind of washes out those people too.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
But I was doing a live stream, probably it was 2 weeks ago. I was doing a live stream with my friend, Becky, and it was the very end of our live stream. And it was a guy who was like, John so-and-so, Ayurvedic yoga coach. And he started in the live stream, started going after us and was like, oh, neither of you look very healthy at all. I think you're the last. Yeah. He's like, you don't look healthy at all. You guys shouldn't be he just started going off. And so I was moderating the chat while I was doing the live stream on YouTube. So I just like blocked him and just, not put it away. So I'm sure that people think that, and it's just kind of stupid, because people that look a certain way, this aesthetic thin or ripped look, they've worked extremely hard to do that. And I think that a lot of people out there on the internet and viewers, they just want a regular person who has a regular life. And if somebody looks like super amazing, maybe they do work out 3 hours a day, but the average person isn't necessarily looking for that. So those people are just being haters, and they're miserable and sad about their own life. So I don't really give them
Yeah,
too much of a thought, Block, delete,
exactly.
fun.
I like it. Okay, so before we move on to the keto carnivore community, one more question. When you were vegan, you were at your thinnest, is that correct?
Oh yes. Oh
And
yes.
so you even you kind of look back and you're like, oh gosh, I like the way I look then, kind of, and it bothers you a little bit that you don't necessarily look like that. But you also just got through saying that you were not healthy. You
No.
did not feel good. But
Mm-mm.
yet if somebody was to judge you, they would say, oh, that Sarah looks better because she's skinny.
Yeah. And it's funny. I don't think, I know I have some body dysmorphia, because I've had a lot of people that aren't carnivore, keto, or anything, just friends of mine, that see some of these old photos of me, because I had some professional photo shoots done, and they were like, you look way too skinny in those photos. Like, you don't look good in those photos. It's me that looks at the photos and says, oh, I look so good, I look so thin. But in reality, friends of mine and, you know, people who just only know me from yoga, don't know anything about my diet or anything like that, are like, oh, you were way too thin, like you didn't look good. So it's more of a head game for me, that I have to wrap my brain around, like loving me right now and loving you know, who I am, who I've become, and not to like romanticize those photos, because I was severely anemic. I had a high A1C. It was almost pre-diabetic, which is crazy because I was vegan, and vegan's supposed to help you cure diabetes. Well, not anymore. Now they just Sean Baker just posted about that the other day, that that's all a bunch of BS. But I was pretty much pre-diabetic and anemic, and, you know, just a whole host of things going on. Had real low cholesterol, but what good is that? So yeah, it's mostly a me game, rather than what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I just, you know, I find it very bothersome though that sometimes, you know, people will just look at a picture, like you said, you know, here are these really, you know, strong, even bodybuilders.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't necessarily healthy.
No,
they're not, because what they have to do to get that look is not healthy.
Yeah.
But we view that, I mean, let's face it, I think we probably all do, that if
Mm-hmm.
you look at somebody with, you know, a woman with these nice toned arms and these ripped abs and, you know, everything's all cool, but she could be super duper unhealthy inside.
Yeah, we don't know what her blood work looks like. We don't know what her sleep looks like. We don't know how she feels. She could be completely cranky all the time because she's hungry all the time. That's how I was when I was like,
me too.
Really, I was just mean, because I couldn't go longer than like a couple hours without having a snack, and I was obsessing over what I was going to eat next, and if something got in the way of my plans, I was going to like explode on you. So yeah, we don't know how that person, we just have a snapshot, we just have a photo, we don't know what the rest of their life really looks like. So but it's the way that it's our, you know, digital society. It's easy to look at something and make assumptions about it. So I try to check myself with that. And then I really dig deeper, like they're, you know, someone who is like super thin and is like, you know, really skinny. I'll follow that person and then like find out that they're just starving themselves constantly. They're not really eating. Great. I can see your abs, but you're not eating.
Yeah. Life is not fun. You know, and when you have to work that hard all the time, because I know when I was going through my craziness, and I would exercise 5 hours a day, every day.
Yeah.
6 days out of the week, sometimes 7. And if I didn't do that, I would start to gain weight. Because I had messed up my body so much. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't do more than that. I can't keep adding more. I can't do it, you know? And so, you know, you don't know what's going on. So you just look at something and you're like, oh, I want to look like them. But do you really? I mean, do you really? Do you know what that cost?
Exactly. I just had a great conversation with Robert Sykes, Keto Savage. I had him on my show because I think a lot of women come to the carnivore diet after years of chronic dieting and years of restriction, and they really have down-regulated their metabolism, you know, exercising hours a day and calorie restricting. And so some people may come to carnivore and allow themselves to eat for the first time and gain weight. And it's not necessarily because the carnivore diet is quote unquote bad. It's just that they have really down-regulated their metabolism from the over-exercising and the chronic restricting and chronic dieting. And so they do need to eat more for periods of time. They need to be in a surplus for periods of time in order to allow their metabolism to catch up and to heal. So it's not like a death sentence, but I do see this happening quite a bit, and not just in keto carnivore, just everywhere. Women trying to be picture perfect and really down regulating their hormonal system and down regulating their metabolism, and just ending up in a terrible position. You know, it doesn't matter what they do, they're going to gain weight because they have taken their metabolism down. You know, they've down regulated. I don't like to say damaged. I've said that before, but it's not irreversible. It is reversible, but it takes usually gaining some weight and eating more food for periods of time, which is hard for women to do. Very hard.
It is. And that's kind of what actually happened to me. And that was actually a question I was going to ask you, so
Yeah.
yay, you actually answered that. So that's cool. But yes, that happened to me too. So, started gaining a little bit of weight, and then with menopause, oh God, now my hormones are wackadoodle. So I'm having to deal with all that. Anyway, well, before we get into carnivore, the community, I just wanted to real quick, so I don't miss out. Look what I got.
Oh, yay. Awesome.
Yeah, I have 4 of them. It's Let's Get Checked tests and blood tests that you can do at home. And I was watching one of your things and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it because I'm having all these hormonal issues and I'm working with a doctor, Dr. J. Wrigley right now,
Oh,
to
nice.
balance. But I just kind of wanted to have a test to kind of see like, where's my thyroid? Could I be, have Hashimoto's and not know it? I don't
Yeah.
know. So I just want to get that done and know. And it's super convenient. I mean, I just got them in today. So being that it's Friday, I have to wait till Monday. You know how that works.
Yeah.
But I'll post all that down below.
Yeah.
Sarah's links and stuff, so you can get a discount.
That'd be awesome.
But I'll be following up on my
Yes.
experience with it. But I just wanted to get that out there because I think that's pretty cool. And you have done that yourself.
Oh,
How
yeah.
have you, just real quick, how have you used this to help you?
Yeah, it's funny. Let's Get Checked. They reached out to me after I had posted a bunch of blood work and had some numbers that came back that were kind of sketchy, that were not so good. And so it was like a savior to me. So if anyone's watching, my code is Yogi20 for 20% off. But and I'll give Amber all the links that they can use. But yeah, it's been a lifesaver for me because I had some numbers like my GFR numbers, which is your kidney filtration rate. Those were super low. It wasn't kidney disease. It wasn't stage 1, but it was like kind of like dangerously low GFR, which is your kidney's filtration rate. So I made some tweaks to my fat protein ratios as well as my electrolytes, and that number has corrected and it's great. I've used it to check in with my thyroid because my T3 was low back in January. I had done way too much fasting and just completely jacked up my body from over fasting. So using Let's Get Checked to check back in with my thyroid. That's good. Same thing with my progesterone and testosterone. Both of those were super low because of over fasting and then probably being in gluconeogenesis too much, which we can talk about, just eating too much protein and not enough fat. It really downregulated my hormonal system. So all those things are doing great now. I'm really, really happy, but I've continued to use Let's Get Checked because they're one of my sponsors, and just to keep checking in with those numbers. And it's super convenient because you don't have to go to a doctor and get stuff done. They just ship the box right to your house. You put this, it's a finger prick sample and send it back in. So it's been very, very helpful for me.
I'm excited. I can't wait to get that done. I hope it's nothing bad. I always hate that because, sometimes I'm one of these denial people and it's like, sometimes I just don't want to know, but I need to know.
But then it helps you like, okay, well, I need to adjust something. And so it gives you something to work with. It's like for years before I went carnivore, I would just go get blood tests and everything would be normal. And I was so frustrated because I'm like, why do I feel so bad? And they're like, everything's normal. And you're like, damn it, I wish something was wrong so I could work on it.
Fix it.
Instead of just feeling bad all the time. So yeah.
It's kind of a double-edged sword right there. You don't want to know, but you do want to know so you can fix it, because when you come back, oh no, everything's great. Why do I feel like crap?
Exactly.
So that's kind of a problem. Okay, so now let's get into the keto carnivore community. Now, here lately, it's been a little while, you have decided to go on and step on outside of what maybe our communities are, this is what you do. You always follow these rules. And you have decided to come out and say, you know what? It doesn't really necessarily work for everybody. So I'm going to give my experience. And Lord, have you got some hate. I've seen some of them comments and I'm like, what the heck? So what is going on with that? And where did you get the confidence or the bravery to go ahead and just say some of these things? Because some of the videos at first when I would see them come out, I'd be like, oh no, she's gonna be getting some bad stuff. Oh no, Sarah, bless your heart, you did it, So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it just came from me, like I was saying it earlier this year, getting all those lab tests back and being like, wow, maybe everything that everyone's saying to do isn't going to work for everybody. And if I'm having these problems, then I bet you a lot of other people are having these problems too. So that kind of gave me confidence. And what gave me more confidence is when there were a couple of videos I put out probably in March where I actually talked about this stuff. And I was like, this is what's going on with me. I don't necessarily have a solution, but this is what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to change my fat protein ratios. I'm going to work with my electrolytes. I'm going to work with my coach, Stephanie Keto Person. She's amazing. She's been a huge source of encouragement, a really dear friend who I've talked with for like hours. And I mean, we talk like every day, but she's really encouraged me and helps me with a lot of this stuff. And she's validated a lot of what I've said. A lot of like the problems that I was having are problems that people have when they follow a low carb or zero carb diet and they're not in ketosis, they're not balancing their electrolytes. Yeah. And so that is kind of where all that, I guess, courage came from. Was I just was like, you know what, I'm going to put this stuff out there. I'm going to share what happened to me and then how I've fixed it and how it's gotten better. And so it's been a wild ride the last like 8 months or so, because when I first started my YouTube channel, I was like, oh, carnivore is the best thing in the world and it works for everybody and everybody should do it and do it this way. And if you're, it's not working, just eat more meat. And, just the classic stuff that you hear people saying. If it's not working, eat more meat. If you're having cravings, eat more meat. Or, if your blood sugar is going up, eat more, like that kind of stuff. And so I've kind of been debunking quite a bit of that on my channel.
Yes, you have. And some people are not really liking that.
Yeah.
What are you kind of developing a thick skin now? Like, I know you blocked a lot of stuff out, but I'm seeing plenty come through.
Yeah.
So you're not totally blocking everything.
Yeah, no, I don't block everything. And I don't like block someone because they disagree with me. If they make a comment and it's in a respectful manner, I'm not going to block them because I disagree. I'm not going to delete it because I disagree with what they're saying. Something that I always say a lot of the times now in my videos is like, if you have a different experience than I do, then that doesn't invalidate your experience,
Yes.
So I don't argue with people if they're like, well, this is what I did and it worked really well. I'm like, well, I always just say, I'm really glad that you found something that worked for you. I'm happy for you. I'm sharing a lot of the stuff that I've done that hasn't worked. And then literally like thousands of comments and messages I've gotten from people. I will get emails from people thanking me for speaking out about this stuff because they're like, I thought I was going crazy because I'm following all these carnivore influencers and they're acting like it's like the freaking yellow brick road and it's, everything's perfect and you don't have to tweak anything. And if you're not having all the results, just keep going, just keep on doing that path. And they just keep feeling worse and worse. So I've been validated a lot, just a lot of feedback I've gotten of people just thanking me for exposing problems that people I think have been having that don't get talked about. They get shoved under the rug or just tossed off. So,
yeah. Well, and the thing is, carnivore is awesome in a lot of ways, but it doesn't mean it's just one way of doing it. And that's the only thing you're saying is that
right.
If it's not working for you, maybe you need to tweak. Maybe you're having the same experience as me. Maybe you're not.
Right.
And so let's get into some of those things that seem to be very controversial. One of them is the whole fasting thing. Like a lot of carnivores, and not all of them, but a lot of them are really big into the fasting. And especially since you do for most of us, tend to reduce our appetite. So we may only eat 2 times a day. And it's not necessarily that we're going by a clock and fasting.
Right.
But what was your experience with fasting? Because I remember following along as you were doing the various fasts and like doing longer and longer ones. And it was a big deal and you were excited about it and all this. So say what happened to you.
Well, it was very fun. It was very addictive because you have so much cortisol pumping through your body and then you like lose weight really quickly and it's just very addictive. So I started off my first extended fast ever. I just jumped right in and did like a 72-hour fast. And I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's amazing. I loved it. And so I kept doing more and more of them. I would do 48 hours. I do 60 hours. I eventually did like a 7-day water, and these are all water fasts with electrolytes, no coffee, I would do black coffee, but I wouldn't do fatty coffees or fat. It would just be water, electrolytes, boom, that's it. So I liked them a lot. They felt really good. Like I said, I would lose weight really fast, but then I started having negative side effects, like just being so freaking exhausted all the time. And then I would get so hungry. So I have a history of binge eating disorder, and I would find myself eating 4 or 5 pounds of meat. So I was like binging on meat. Now, did I go and eat a bunch of sugar and carbs? No. But arguably a binge is a binge. You're still overeating something. So that would start happening to me, where I would just eat a bunch of meat, and then my metabolism was so down regulated, because when you take the nutrients away for days at a time, it will slow down your metabolism. It will down regulate your metabolism. And so I would gain weight really, really quickly. And then my cycle completely went away. And I was like, wait a minute, I think I'm a little too young to be not having a cycle. So I started having the cycle issues, and I had already had issues with PCOS before I started carnivore. And so those issues actually got worse with the fasting. And so, and so then I was like, well, I'm just only going to do intermittent fasting. And that was still too much stress on my body. It was still too much stress. And so finally, when I started working with Stephanie in February, that's when I started eating within 30 minutes of waking every single day. And I had never done that. I had really been fasting for years, even before I started carnivore. Like I was doing 1 meal a day when I was doing paleo. I would do that, and it would keep me really thin. So I had been really intermittent fasting before it was like even like a thing. I had just done it forever for weight control. So Stephanie was like, you got to eat within 30 minutes of waking. And I got my cycle back within 2 weeks of that, as well as switching to a high fat carnivore diet, doing the high fat ratios. So it was pretty quick when I just said no more, because I was doing 18-hour, 20-hour, 16-hour, I would just do those every day, because I was caught up in like getting the benefits of fasting. And for me, it was just too much of an added stressor, and also eating in a caloric deficit a lot of the time also. So I had this, like I said, a great conversation with Robert Sykes. And he says the only time he recommends fasting for anyone is if they're in a calorie surplus. So he's like, never, ever do any fasting from a caloric deficit, because that's when you're really going to start to see issues hormonally with your body. So that was a big mistake I was making. And I just didn't know, because we just preach about the great benefits. That's all we talk about. Yeah. And the thing about fasting is there have not really been a lot of studies that have been done on women of reproductive age in regards to fasting. It's mostly on men, rats, of course, and postmenopausal women. So women in perimenopause, going through menopause, women of reproductive age, we haven't done a bunch of studies on those people. So when people go online and they start talking about all these benefits of fasting, they're probably not talking about a woman, honestly. Yeah.
Okay, so you talk about how it was stressing your body. Now, out of curiosity, did you use one of these tests to test your cortisol to see if that was jacked up? Did you ever do that? Because I'm actually going to do that.
Yeah, my cortisol was actually okay, which was surprising. But I had a history before I even started carnivore of having chronically low cortisol, just from severe adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnout, just because I already have a very stressful life. Outside of doing any dieting or, ways of eating, my life is just already stressful. So I had a history of low cortisol, but it'd be interesting to see what the test says, because I know a lot of people who do a lot of fasting, or even that are keto or low carb and maybe aren't necessarily in the state of ketosis, that start to have issues with cortisol.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so if somebody doesn't know that they're stressed, what are some signs they can look for that maybe fasting isn't the best thing for them? What can they look for? Because I mean, a lot of people probably think because you're getting the benefits that they don't even pay attention to those things.
I would say number one, your sleep. I started waking up a lot at night. So I was definitely having sleep issues. You know, as a woman, if you do have a regular monthly cycle, you know, problems with your cycle, either it's not coming on time, or you're not ovulating. Now, I track my ovulation every month as well, which is something I'm starting to bring a lot of awareness out to women, because I didn't know about this stuff until I was like 40 years old, which is crazy to me, that no one teaches you about your reproductive hormones and the reproductive cycle. And so a lot of women, maybe they're getting their cycle, but they're not actually ovulating. That's something to take a look at. Your body temperature, your pulse. Having a super, super low pulse is not necessarily a good thing. Yeah, so tracking metrics like that, I think, is very helpful. And then, you know, if you eat, if you have a big day of eating, do you just gain weight super, super, super easy? You know, that could be a sign that you've downregulated your metabolism from over fasting or too much restricting.
Very interesting. Yeah. You know, I'm a proponent of fasting. I think it's a good thing, but there are always circumstances where it's not a good thing, and you have to kind of figure out where you're at and what your body is okay with. And you know, some people can get away with it longer, some people just can't do it, shouldn't do it.
Yeah,
You know,
but I've been doing it for years and years, like before I even went carnivore. And so I had a lot of years of that. And then also fasting is a stressor. So if you have other chronic stresses in your life, then it may not be the best thing for your body.
Oh, yes, I could not agree with that more. Okay, so now the other controversial thing, or at least what I've kind of seen as controversial, is the high fat versus high protein. It seems like, you know, a lot of people in the carnivore community, it's about the more protein, because that's the point. It's carnivore, it's protein. It's, you know, you talk a little bit about that and how it's affected you.
Yeah. So I think getting a continuous glucose monitor is very eye-opening and very helpful. That was one of the first things where I had that glucose monitor on my arm and was looking at, I was having glucose spikes in my sleep, that it was going 30, 40 points up, starting at like, you know, 11 o'clock, and it would rise through the night. That's gluconeogenesis, and it's a very inefficient metabolic process. I mean, we talk about it, it's like, oh, gluconeogenesis is not bad. It's not inherently bad, but you don't want to live there. You don't want to be there. And so, you know, I know in the keto space years ago, there was this major, major fear of protein and steak turning to cake and all that. And that has kind of gone away. Now, I'm not saying to live in fear and to like that's necessarily a true thing. But I think that what has happened is this surge of protein, and it's so good for you and it's so healthy, that people are not in ketosis. And I think that everyone has a protein threshold. I'm kind of playing around with mine just a little bit to see if I can, how much protein I can eat before it starts knocking me out of ketosis and I start having side effects from not being in ketosis, like interrupted sleep, you know, brain fog, feeling tired, feeling exhausted. I start to have issues like that if I'm not in ketosis. If I'm eating zero carbohydrates, I'm depleting my glycogen, but I don't have enough ketones in my body to fuel me. So ketones, glucose, those are the body's preferred fuel sources. Gluconeogenesis is this like middle place here. And for me, it really started causing me a lot of problems. And so that's why I do stay in that high fat carnivore diet, because for me to not have carbohydrates in my body, I need to really run off those ketones. I really need ketones in order to efficiently fuel my body and feel my best. You know, it's just my experience. And this is what Stephanie says a lot. Stephanie, Keto Person, talks about this quite a bit. It's just this, you know, people being in gluconeogenesis and it beginning to cause problems for them.
Yeah, very interesting. So it sounds to me like being in that in-between place where you're not really in ketosis, but you're not eating carbs. So you're not like, you know, living on glucose either. So you're in this in-between stage. And how do you know you're in that in-between stage? I mean, like, say you have a blood monitor and you can check your ketones. I mean, is there such a thing as you actually are in ketosis, but it's not showing up a lot in your blood because you're more able to use them? Is that a thing? Have you found that that is a false narrative?
Yeah, I
What do
think
you
that's a
think?
false narrative, to be honest with you. I think that the longer you're in ketosis, the less ketones you're going to register, for sure. That's 100% true. But you should still register ketones if you are in fact in ketosis on a blood meter. Now, P tests, those we know that those are completely ineffective and inaccurate as far as showing ketosis. But Stephanie, my friend Stephanie, has been in ketosis. She's been on keto for 13 years with 0 refeeds, and she shows ketones in her blood, above 1.0. Are you going to get a reading of are you going to get a reading of like 4.5? No, more than likely not. When I first switched over to eating this way, I was waking up with 0 fasting, but I was in like my ketones were like 4.5, 5.0, 6.0. And I was like, what the hell? And she's like, no, this is your body is just now starting to produce them. That number is going to go down and down and down. And now I would say when I check my ketones, they're usually between a 2.0 and a 3.5.
Wow.
Typically, every morning fasted.
That's really good though. Yeah.
And then glucose is between 70 and 80 typically. Those are my fasted numbers. So it's blood sugar and it's ketones, and ketones usually between 1.5 and 3.0 is a good range for your ketones. And then your blood sugar, again, you don't want it to get too much above 80 or you're kind of getting out of that ketotic range. And I know there's a lot of people who would disagree with me, and that's okay. But to say that because someone's been in ketosis for a long time, they're not going to register ketones on a blood meter, I don't think that's true.
That's really, I know when I was still keto, when I was eating, high fat, and I was very strict. I mean, I had whittled down and I got rid of the treats and all that because I just didn't care anymore. Right before starting carnivore, mine had dropped without doing anything different. And I know I am not one of these that I will say if I cheated, I cheated, I did not. And I was registering like 0.2, 0.3, and I'm like,
oh wow,
what in the world? But when I was registering like 4.5, but I wrote down everything. I'm just like that. I just tracked everything. And like I said, I was very strict about everything, but you could just see my ketones doing this without changing my diet.
Wow.
It was really bizarre. So I was kind of like, what's going on here? So, and my blood glucose was very low. Probably for a lot of people, it would be hypoglycemic for them, but that's where I felt good. And so I never was concerned about that. So I didn't have high blood glucose. It's just really weird. So that's always been very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Okay. But who knows? Maybe I'm an anomaly. I'm weird. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I just know that that's, kind of the conversations I've had with Stephanie after she's coached, over 4,000 people over the last, 12, 13 years. That's more coming from her and her knowledge than it is from me and my knowledge of working with people and anecdotal evidence. So that's where that comes from. Yeah.
We're all different anyway.
Right.
Like I said, I'm probably a weirdo, so who knows? Okay. Oh, another thing that's kind of controversial is with carnivore, you're generally told, calories you just don't measure those. You just eat to your appetite, which I mean, for the most part, I agree with that. It works for me because I can't overeat protein for some reason. I just can't. So I don't have that binge eating issue. So, of course, some people do, they do have to worry about it. But you have come out and talked about how, I mean, not that you count calories every day, but that you've counted calories to figure out where you need to be, which kind of goes against what you generally hear about carnivore. So talk a little bit about that, because I watched those videos and I thought that it was very fascinating, and I loved what you did. And I think, some people probably really do need to do what you did. So give a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, it's more women, I think, than men. Usually men don't come into carnivore and gain any weight. But I think a lot of women do come in and they start gaining weight. And I did the whole, like, don't count, don't track and measure. for the better part of like a year and a half, and I just was not losing weight. And so I finally was like, I just need to just do this energy balance thing. I need to know how much I'm eating, how much my body is actually burning off, and start to adjust, because, you know, I tried a year and a half, just eat till you're satisfied and this, that, and the other, and it just wasn't getting me where I wanted to go. So what I essentially did was I tracked, and it's energy. I mean, calories are energy. And I think that your metabolism is a bit different. Like, it's a metabolic advantage to be in ketosis, to be in that ketogenic state. So we do get some metabolic advantage from being in that state. However, it's not an all-you-can-eat buffet, and people can and will overeat even on carnivore, because if you have a disordered relationship with food, or you have a history of binging disorder, any of that stuff, just going carnivore is not going to cure that. So for me, what I did was, and I was like, I'm not trying to lose weight super, super fast. So what I started doing was just tracking how much I was eating. The first week I lost like a half a pound, and I was like 0.6. I was like, okay, well, that was a deficit that week. So I took 7 days. I added up all the calories for that week, divided it by 7. I was like, this is my average. Okay, so for next week, I'm going to take it down. I think I took it down 200 calories and said, let me just try that and just try to stick in that average for next week. Did that, and then I lost 0.4 of a pound, which is still like good. So I was like, okay, let me see if I can bump this up another 200 calories. And so that third week, finally, my weight stabilized, didn't lose, didn't gain. I'm like, cool. So this is how much, and I kept my activity levels and the time of day of the week, all of that I was weighing myself exactly the same, kept as many variables the same as humanly possible. And so I was like, okay, so this is how much that I need to eat in order to not gain weight and also not lose weight. So let me take this to like a 300 calorie a day deficit underneath this number. So that's pretty much where I've been for the last couple months, is just trying to eat about 300 calories under that maintenance number and slowly lose weight. And so it's been working really well for me. And the weight loss is very slow, because again, it's like only a 300 calorie deficit. They say to lose 1 pound a week, you need a 500 calorie a day deficit. So I'm going 300. Because I am really conscious about keeping myself ovulating, keeping my hormones in a good place. And a calorie deficit is definitely a stress on your body also. So I'm just trying to be very patient, which is very hard for me, because I'm really good at slashing the calories and going into full restriction mode, and then losing weight really, really fast, but then gaining it all back. So I'm trying to do things differently. And I feel like with a carnivore diet, I'm eating the most nutrient dense bioavailable food possible for my body. I'm getting nourishment. I'm not having any issues with energy. So I feel like I'm on the right track for me right now.
That's awesome. I loved how you did that. I think that's like a really cool way to know what your body is, not what somebody tells you. Oh, well, you're about this height, blah, blah, blah. You should probably
all those
eat
calculators online. I don't think that they're accurate. There's so many.
How can they?
There's too many variables. How much muscle do you have on your body? How much activity are you actually doing? All of those things that they're going to come into play, and how much, what's your non-exercise activity thermogenesis is. So like how much fidgeting you do and moving around and jittering and like all that stuff, like that's all going to come into play of your metabolism. And it's not just like this flat thing. So I get a lot of crap from people for saying that I'm counting calories, but it's not that simple. It's not just, I'm not just going calories in, calories out. I'm accounting for a whole lot of other stuff too.
Well, and you're finding what works for your body. You're not treating it like an equation in this closed system. Exactly. You're allowing your body to tell you where you need to be. And I mean, yeah. And also there are a lot of people who are not in tune to their proper hunger signals too. especially like the binge eating disorder people. And when you've, had so much, bad stuff you're eating and all, and it's messed up those signals anyway, it takes a long time to really be able to trust those again anyway. So sometimes that, intuitive eating doesn't necessarily work either.
No, I don't think intuitive eating works at all. I mean,
I would have to agree with
maybe
that. Yeah.
One day I'll be able to do it, but at this point I'm not. I'm not trying.
I hear you. Let me check the time here. Okay, it looks like we're coming up pretty close on time. So I think I pretty much got most of the things that I wanted to talk about. So are there any words of advice you can give somebody who say they are in the so-called echo chamber and they're hearing all these very dogmatic views and they are feeling confused because what everybody else seems to work for everybody else, it's not working for them? What can you tell them to help them, figure out what's good for them?
Yeah, I mean, experiment on yourself is the first thing. I have the CGM, I have the Let's Get Checked, I've got all of those, testing metrics that I've used, and I have my OURA ring, and I continue to use to just see like, how's my sleep, even with this calorie deficit. If my sleep I've had a couple of times where my sleep has started to suffer. So I've taken like a week and then upped my calories by like a couple hundred. So I've only been in like 100 calorie deficit. So I've had to just like keep tweaking and changing things along the way. Just check in with your sleep, check in with those metrics, and also be careful who you listen to. There are a lot of very charismatic people who are very certain of what they're saying, but they're not actually working with other people. That's what befriending Stephanie has been for me, is like, oh my gosh, this woman has worked with over 4,000 people in the last, 12, 13 years. There's a lot of validity in what she's saying because she's worked one-on-one with so many people and come across so many problems. So there's a lot of people in the keto and carnivore space who, number one, have only been doing the diet like a year or two themselves, and then they're like up here preaching about what's going to work for you, and not working with anybody one-on-one, and just using their own anecdotal evidence as like word for everybody else. So you really need to be careful of who you listen to, and this space is getting bigger and bigger and more saturated with more and more voices. And I will hear people say stuff and just like facepalm, like totally disagree with it, but maybe that advice will work for somebody. But it's like anybody who says always and never, just be really careful.
Yes, I could not agree more. And find what works for you. Experiment.
Yeah.
Oh, and let me ask you about the OURA ring. Do you really think that's worth it?
I've been
considering. Okay.
I really do like it because, it just shows me, it's another way I track ovulation, because it shows your body temperature fluctuations. It shows your HRV, which is your body's ability to recover. So if you've had a really hard workout, or if you've worked out a lot of days in a row, you're not going to have the same recovery rate. It'll tell you resting heart rate. It'll tell you, it's just a lot of metrics.
Okay.
The sleep data is really good. It'll tell you how much deep sleep, how much REM sleep, how many times you're getting up. So I find those metrics to be really useful, especially, like I said, with the calorie deficit. A couple things I'm paying attention to is if my heart rate's going too low, then I probably need to back off of the deficit for a little bit and give myself a couple of refeed days or even a refeed week. Or if my sleep is getting super disturbed, that's another sign right there that maybe I'm pushing my body a little bit too hard. So yeah, I find the data really helpful. I don't live and die by it, but it is a nice metric to kind of be able to fine tune what I'm doing.
Is it better than Fitbit, you think?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because Fitbit doesn't give you your HRV, heart rate variability, which is your body's ability to recover from stress, recover from exercise. When the pandemic first started, I actually took my ring off for about a month because my HRV was so terrible because I was so stressed out like everybody else. My sleep got really bad, and I was just like, you know what? We're going through a global pandemic and a lot of stress right now. So maybe I just need to take this thing off until I feel a little more calm, and then I can start measuring again. And that's what I did. Because stress is going to affect all of that. It's like everything can kind of fly out the window when you're under an extreme amount of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also for y'all, I'll put the links below for the R ring, these tests, and also for the continuous glucose monitor, because you have a good link for that. And I will be doing that soon.
Cool.
That's on my wish list. First I want to get tested. I'm trying to, do this hormone thing, trying to, stabilize things. Then that's my next thing. I really want to do that. So I'm excited about that. But thank you so much for joining me, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I know you're extremely busy, and today's already been kind of a weird day for you. So maybe you can get some really good stuff done now.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was fun. Always fun to chat with you. I had a great time when you came on my channel, so we'll definitely have to do it again.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Oh, don't forget to subscribe and follow Sarah if you're not. Now I've done my. All right. Bye, Sarah.